Hey, Eagles fans, if you're a subscriber to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, you are already registered to win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming season. That's right, you could win a pair of season tickets for the upcoming 2021 season just for being a subscriber. If you're watching and you're not a subscriber, do it now. Subscribe to the JAKIB Media YouTube channel right now. What do you need to do? Subscribe right now.
Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Oh, you need to stay tuned all day long, because not long after he finishes up with us, he's got middle duties right here. He had offensive line duties for the Eagles for years, and when we really need to know how good the Eagle offensive line played, when it was pretty damn good on Sunday, we bring in our guy Barrett Brooks, who hops aboard with us on Birds 365. How much smiling were you doing on Sunday watching your fellow Eagle line mates, offensive linemen playing the way they did, Barrett?
Just from the left tackle on, it was just incredible how these guys came together and played the way they played. They could do anything they wanted to do out there on offense because those guys look good, man. And I told people the reason why I was so pig-headed on saying this team will win 9 games is because they're built well in the trenches. As long as those guys stay healthy in the trenches, there's no limit to what they can do. And it just goes to show, this last week that they played together as a unit and, they were able to do what they wanted to do.
Barrett, I kept the offensive line questions away from Brandon Lee Gowton. We had him on the first hour because I wanted to get to him with you. Now, there is a little nitpicking you can do in the first half because they did play together, and there was a ton of penalties. I mean, they were just throwing flags all over the place. But, some of them were pre-snap penalties, so that you can't blame on the officials even if you wanted to. That stuff's got to be cleaned up. But you're right. When you see Jordan Mailata get that kick-out block on the Jalen Reagor touchdown, the classic Jason Kelsey double block when he gets out in front of Miles Sanders on the running play. This is a top-5 offensive line. If you can block people in this league, nobody knows better than you. You can win a lot of football games. How good can this offensive line be? Could it be even better than that because of the advancement of Jordan Mailata in his career?
No question. I mean, he settled it down. At this point, you had the body guy out there for a long time. And Jason Peters, held it down, which made him a top-ranked offensive lineman because nothing like a quarterback understanding that his backside is being protected. He doesn't see ghosts. For a lot of the last year's team, you look at Carson, he had ghosts a lot because he didn't trust the left side. He didn't trust the left tackle. So, it really kind of messed his game up also. But now, I mean, he's solidified in front of him, and just like on those plays, this is a very athletic offensive line also. All these guys can get out there and run in space. You have guys that can block at the point of attack and drive. I mean, there were times when they were having double teams in the second half that they were taking the 3 technique and dumping them on the lap of the linebacker. The linebacker was wrong every single time because he couldn't get on one side or the other because his defensive line was in his lap. He couldn't go anywhere. When you have blocks like that, it makes things a whole lot easier to read. It defines where the run is supposed to go with the running back. It gives you a sense of security at the quarterback position because guys, where he's going to be at. They're going to drive those guys around the corner up the field, and then they're solidifying things up front. There was really no penetration in the second half. There was in the first half because they were bringing blitz. But once they got him out of blitzing because it started hurting him, then they couldn't blitz. Then they had a solid pocket, man. He could stay back there as long as he wanted to and get the ball down the field.
One of the things we debated about plenty before the season got underway, Barrett, was what kind of an offense were the Eagles going to be in? How often were they going to be in 12 offense, which means 2 tight ends because they were one of the leaders in the National Football League in that this year. They wanted to get more speed on the field, want to be in more 3 and 4 wide receiver sets. Well, when your offensive line is as good as their offensive line was, it makes it that much easier to go, yeah, we don't need 2 tight ends out there. If we want to get the 3 and 4 wide receiver sets, we just got confidence in our front 5, or if we've got to leave the back end for extra protection, get the job done. I think it opens up all different possibilities for Nick Sirianni going forward with how good they played week 1.
Absolutely. You're talking about a guy that mastered, or I'm sorry, not mastered, took control of the personnel packages that he had in there. He understood what he had in there, just like with the tight ends. He was masterful, and when I say masterful, Hurts understood where he was supposed to go with the ball. He didn't hold the ball a lot. He got the ball out of his hands. They cut the field in half, only gave him half a field to read. As he advances more into this offense, he'll be able to, screen across the whole field. But it was a great game plan, understanding what they were going to get from, this this Falcons team that wasn't really good on defense. But still, when you have a defensive coordinator like that, he could still mix some things up, and kind of confuse your quarterback. Jalen Hurts had command of it. He didn't look, phased at all. He understood where he was supposed to go with the ball. He knew when he needed to run, when he didn't need to run. He understood if they were in man coverage that he could run and pick up some good yardage because everybody be turned around guarding their men. But even in zone, he saw what he had to do in the read options. He'd pull it. He'd, get it out to the receiver. Those are things that, he looked very, very good in. And it's because his offensive line was helping him out too. This is why I like the fact that, we didn't see as much during the training camp, but he did show us enough in this game to say, all right, we can run anything we want to run with the personnel packages we have.
Now, Barrett, you mentioned something interesting there, because this has always been, when NFL teams started to do this, I took notice, and it becomes a problem at some point. If you try to cut the field in half, it becomes unsustainable, or at least it did. There's a lot of innovation going to more of a college style offense by a lot of NFL teams. Is that more sustainable now to cut the field in half, things like that?
Well, we want to talk about, Jalen Hurts using his skill set. And when they say his skill set, he can move around. He runs well outside of the pocket. He uses athleticism to make plays. Well, when you do that, you kind of have to cut the field in half, because if he's rolling or booting one direction, he's not going to be able to scan it from the entire field. He's had to go from that hash mark on in, because that's where he's going. It's not good to throw across your body. Well, that's what comes when you have a quarterback that can move around like that. If you want him to move around, you can't have it all. You know what I mean? It's by, it's not a default in the offense in doing that, if you can do it well. And they seem to be able to do it well. What really will help him out more so than cutting the field in half is running the ball. Then you could take a shot down the field. This defense didn't allow them to go down the field because they ran so much zone, which, and kept it too deep, or single high, deep. So you couldn't really get, the long ball going. But, he had great passes underneath on the routes that they had, like the dig routes and the crossing routes. He was able to get defined even in that zone system, because the offensive line gave him so much time to get the ball down the field.
Barrett, I want to get inside the head of an offensive lineman here. We know Jalen took off and ran 7 times, did so effectively in the game against the Falcons. I brought this up yesterday. One of the things that I was glad to see was, more often than not, when he took off, he went toward the sideline.
Yes.
Because they kind of need him as their quarterback. At least that's my opinion. And he's less apt to get hurt dancing to that sideline and getting out of bounds. When you're an offensive lineman, the quarterback breaks containment. He's turning it up the field. You want to go, but if he's ahead, you got to be careful, because if you block, you can get blocking in the back and bring it back. Do you audibly root? Sideline, sideline, sideline. Because it's better for him and it's better for you. Because if he turns it back up the field, that's when the coach is going to look at you and go, Barrett, get down there. Get in front of him.
Well, it's tough because, even on the touchdown they had called back with Lane Johnson down the field, you don't know what he's going to do. And that's one of the hardest things with blocking with a mobile quarterback, because you don't know where he's going to be at. Blocking for Randall Cunningham was far different from blocking for Rodney Peete. Rodney Peete was going to be a stationary quarterback. He'll be in the pocket. You never knew where Randall was going to come. So when you're blocking a guy, you may be blocking him into the play, and this is where you're supposed to do. You're an offensive tackle. You block a defense in all the way out up the field, 10 yards up the field, and here you see Randall Cunningham going outside I'm like, what is he doing there? See, that's one of the faults that, you play with a guy that can move around like that. Hurts has more than functional mobility. He can get out there and run, and he can go out there and make great decisions out there. But it's really hard on offensive line because then you want to, all right, if he's running down the field, you want to get out there and block for him. But then he's right by the line of scrimmage and he throws the ball down the field. Now you're stuck because you're like 5 yards down the field. So it's, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But it just comes a part of being with a mobile quarterback like that.
Yeah, some of that's baked in. You're going to have those illegal man downfield penalties at times, as you point out, Barrett. I want to talk about other people's responsibilities in pass protection, because you as an offensive lineman, you guys know, look, if the quarterback gets sacked, you guys get blamed. A lot of times it's other people's fault. Sometimes it's the quarterback's fault. And it's a covered sack and they don't get the football out. At one point in that game, Devontae Smith kind of showed off his football IQ, calling out cat, because he saw the cornerback blitz. How important is it for other guys to realize what's going on, whether it be somebody like Devontae Smith or the quarterback himself, and understanding, okay, blitz is coming. What do I have to do to make sure this pass protection works?
I'm glad you told me that, man, because a lot of people don't understand it's not just the offensive line's fault, if they give up a sack or they see a blitz, because in protections, you have scat protection, you have 7-man protection, 6-man protection, you have 5-man protection. The protection is allocated on where the Mike linebacker is. Wherever the Mike is, that's where the protection is set on. Like you have slide protection, it's not the Mike that you have, but it's actually the will backer, who's ever on the outside. If you have man protections, you more so than not, you're going to go with the Mike. And if the Mike disappears, the offensive line has him. If he doesn't, then somewhere else comes from. We're not responsible for him. And everybody thinks, oh, you're responsible for it. There was nobody blocking him. This guy was sitting, free. He should have went out there and blocked him. Well, in the protection scheme, it might not be the case. People don't understand when receivers look at protection and they understand blitz protection. They have to understand it because with them, if one guy disappears, it might be picked up. But if two guys disappear, now they have to run a route in order, to get back to the quarterback, make eye contact with the quarterback, because he becomes the hot read. So there's more so with wide receivers. Two people disappear, they look for the hot, and they got to run a route, in accordance to that. Running backs have to make sure they know where the offensive line going, so they don't try to block their man. They have to be responsible for it too. Like slide protection, I said we don't block the Mike, we block the will backer. So they have responsibility of the Mike backer then and the Sam linebacker, which is to the play. So there's so many different ways in which you have to understand who has who and where what hot routes need to be done. And sometimes it's a quarterback's man. Sometimes if they bring 6 and we only have 5 to block, then he has to understand who's going to be the hot guy. If that 6th guy comes and he comes into the A gap and a B gap between the center and the guard, or the guard and the tackle, then the tackle has to come down and get that linebacker. That means he has a big defensive end unblocked coming towards me. He has to know to get the ball out of his hands and get it to the receiver or throw it out of bounds or whatever, because he is unblocked and there's nobody that can get him. And when everybody looks at it, look at the offensive tackle like, oh, man, he just let that guy go. He just got his quarterback killed. Well, that's not necessarily the case. He was going to this responsibility. He's going to get the MDM, most dangerous man. And it's easier for a linebacker that comes through the A gap to get to the quarterback. That's the shortest way to the quarterback than a defensive end who has to come out, 3 guys removed. So, people have to understand that, blitz protection is complicated. Everybody has to be on the same place. The quarterback, the offensive line, receivers, tight ends, and running backs all have to be on the same page to pick up these blitzes.
Barrett, let me ask you, after you get the phone.
There we go. Sorry about that.
That's okay. You talked about whose job it is, whose responsibilities. What does the scheme ask each player to do? Whose responsibility was it to block Jason Hargrave on Sunday? Because he didn't do a very good job, whoever he was. He got called on it by the offensive line coach in Atlanta pretty much as soon as the game's over, I'm thinking.
Poor little fella, man. Young guy, rookie, has to go through the bumps of bruises. He just caught, he just caught a guy that had a great camp. And, Hargrave, during post and pregame show, in the pregame show, you give your player the game who you think is going to have most impact in the game. Well, I picked Hargrave to have 1.5 sacks. And
yeah, there we go.
Very nice.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I knew it because I saw the way he played in camp. I knew they was going to have a rookie over him. And then I just, it just made perfect sense to me that Hargrave was going to have a phenomenal game because he couldn't be blocked. He's finally got into this system and understanding what his role is in this system. Last year, he was in between two systems. He was still, in that two-gap mentality that he had in Pittsburgh. Well, he had a whole year now to get out of that mindset, and now he's a one-gap player. Means he only has that one gap he's responsible for, and he can get up the field and create penetration. That's exactly what he did. He couldn't his jump off the ball. He was just on the ball and on the offensive guard so fast that he couldn't react. The young guy's like, what is going on? I mean, he couldn't move, man. He was in his lap already, and he has the dip and leverage to just push him back. I mean, I hated to be Matty Ice. Somebody was in his face from the middle all day, and that's the worst place to rush a quarterback and give him a problem is in the interior, because on the outside you could step up, but when you can't step up from the inside, it's the hardest thing for a quarterback to throw the ball, step to his throws, and that's usually how you get most of your interceptions and stuff, when a quarterback can't step into the ball and he has to use just arm strength. That's when things go awry for him. So I knew Hargrave was going to have a great game, and he definitely showed me that he's ready for this one gap system.
Yeah, he did have a great summer as well. I thought he or Josh Sweat was probably the best defensive player over the summer. Want to get a mind of the player question to you, Barrett, because you played a long time. You've been on both sides of this, 32-6 routes. Probably got beat 32-6.
Yep.
Similarly, a couple times. What's harder to deal with? I mean, if you lose, you get back, you work hard, you got to do. If you win, everybody's patting you on the back, saying how great you are. Eagles have gone from disaster to Super Bowl contender in record time in certain people's minds. How do you handle that as a player? Is it more difficult for a coach to keep the guys focused after a route or after blowouts?
After a route, when you route somebody, you in cloud line, and you think you've already, you've arrived. It's easier from the standpoint of getting back to work and getting back to getting, focused on the game plan when you get routed, because you got to get better. So it's harder for, especially this young coaching staff, and this is such a young team, and they play so many young players, man. Johnson, they played a lot of guys, their first and second year guys that, made the roster. They actually played on Sunday. I couldn't believe it. Gainwell played a lot. All these young guys are out there, and they're, they have key roles, and they're playing well within these roles. It's going to be harder to get them focused after a win than it is, after a loss. So you want to get that stench off your body when you lose. When you win, there's a bunch of people patting you on the back. But hey, I heard this phrase. One of my producers in NBC Sports coined this phrase. I have had enough September Super Bowls that I'm not buying into this all the way. They still got to show me more. And that's exactly what, this week was. It was a September Super Bowl. They got to make sure that they understand it. They're still a team that, has a lot of work to do, an awful lot of work to do. And let's hope they don't become complacent. I said the same thing about Jordan Mailata. He won the starting job. He was that guy. I didn't want him to become complacent. Well, hey, now that you've got the money, that's why you've worked so hard to get the money. Will he become complacent? I doubt it seriously. I hope not. But, these are serious issues that could, show and rear their head if they don't stay, steadfast and on that goal of being a good team.
Yeah, ask that safety from the Falcons who Jordan got on the second level on the Rager touchdown. He played complacent. Man,
that poor guy. I think they just scraped him up in Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
He wrote a check he couldn't cash, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it didn't end well for him. All right, Barrett, another sports psychology kind of question. The Eagles come off the 32-6 win. My opinion, the Falcons are going to be a bad football team. I thought they were going to be a bad football team before the first game. After seeing that, I believe they're going to be a bad football team all year long. So you got to keep the win in its proper perspective. I think the 49ers are going to be a darn good football team. And again, we now have a week to judge that we didn't prior to. Their offense looked very explosive against a bad Lions team. You always have to remember the opponent's level of talent as well. The Eagles are going to have a tougher task this week. Good thing that it's home, but, and I don't think I mentioned this yesterday, the first week in the NFL, 9 road teams won in 16 games. More road teams won than home teams, which you almost never see in the National Football League.
Wasn't a bunch of underdogs, too, as a whole?
Yeah, a lot of them.
Underdogs and road teams, which oftentimes go hand in hand, did very well in week number 1. San Francisco's got to come here. The whole cross-country thing, 1 o'clock time zone, all that factors in.
Oh, they actually stayed here. They're staying here on the East Coast.
Oh, they didn't go back at all?
No, they didn't go back. They're staying here on the East Coast.
Thank you very much for that piece of information. But how do you prepare for that as a player? Your mindset, okay, yeah, we kicked some ass last week, but now it's going to be a little tougher ass to kick. How do you ratchet it up for a team like San Francisco after beating down a team like Atlanta?
Well, you look at what they're about to face. This will be one of the biggest tests this offensive line will have. It'll be one of the biggest tests these DBs will face, with the guys the way they have going on right now. I mean, look at the DBs. The receivers. Deebo Samuels is playing at a high level right now. He's a jack of all trades kind of player. He's a Jalen Reagor type of player. I mean, he does everything for that team. Then you got Brandon. Ayuk? Brandon Ayuk is playing at a high level also. He's a deep threat. He can take the ball down the field. You look at the defensive line. They got some players they got to play against. Most notably a player that just left the division, but it's probably he's the highest paid offensive tackle right now in Trent Williams. You look at the George Kittle. I mean, talking about one of the better tight ends in the league. The defense, especially their defensive line, this offensive line has their work cut out for them. Of course, everybody knows about Nick Bosa. That's going to be the great, barometer on where Jordan Mailata is playing against, a guy like Nick Bosa. That's going to be,
Nick Bosa.
This is going to be class of the Titans.
I haven't seen him play yet since the injury, but man, as a rookie, he was just phenomenal.
Yes,
just phenomenal player. I want to keep that player because I want to talk about Kyle Shanahan's running scheme because everybody talks about it. So
right.
I don't know if you saw him yesterday yet, if you delved into it, but you've seen it in the past. What does he do that's so much different than anybody else as far as an offensive lineman goes? Why are they always so effective running the football?
Well, they stress your gaps. Shanahan, he learned from his pops. They run zone. They run zone plays, and when I was in camp with them, and the way they oversimplify the run scheme, it just makes it so easy for an offensive lineman to block it. They block spaces. They don't block people. They block spaces. So, the running back will always keep the same course, and it's gonna the offensive line will take him to where he needs to be. But they block space. They don't necessarily worry about the guy that's in front of them. The backside, they're gonna cut every time they can cut. They're gonna cut, and they're gonna force them to overstress different gaps within the offensive line. So now they're going laterally, not blocking a guy, but going laterally. Now that back can cut and stay. When he say one step cut, that's all he gets is one step cut, and he's going downhill. And that's what makes them so good because they understand the relationship between space and where a player is supposed to be and how you could stress a gap from the linebacker and offensive line just by displacing them so far when they're running these zone schemes. But you have to have a stud tight end also, and they have that, in George Kittle. So that's what makes them so good. They're blocking spaces, and they understand how to stress gaps by, building bigger spaces that these guys have to fill. And that's what makes them so successful, man. They've been doing it for years. And I love that system when I was there. They just cut me, so I didn't like them too much, man. But it's a great system if you understand conceptually where you're supposed to be and why you need to get where you need to get, so it stresses the defense and their gaps get bigger, and now they have a bigger space that they have to cover.
So real quick follow-up. Sorry, Jody, because this is interesting to me. Why do more teams not follow? Because as you mentioned, this goes back to Mike Shanahan and Alex Gibbs. And why aren't they more capable of teaching it, of copying?
Well, Because you have to have offensive linemen that understand, number one, what they're supposed to do. Number two, they have to be athletically enough to be able to do that. They have smaller guys. I mean, Trent Williams is probably their biggest player, but everybody else are smaller. And not big offensive linemen. They're smaller offensive linemen. So you'll be great in the run, but you don't necessarily have the bigger players to stop the pass rush. It's a give and take type of system. You have smaller offensive linemen. If you look at their linemen, their linemen are smaller than most offensive linemen, simply because you have to be able to be very athletic. Now the Eagles can run the same scheme because they have athletic guys that can run a little bit. I would venture to say, like, even Brooksy might be a little too big to be in their type of system, but you have to have smaller guys in order to do that. And then that's it's hard, man. It's a hard system to run. Until you get those guys that fit that type of system, it's hard for you to go ahead and do it. Trent Williams is just a great athlete, a great player, so he can run any system. But you have to have guys that fit within the mold of Shanahan type of system.
Barrett, know that, at least my perception of it with fans out there, that fans look at offensive linemen as guys whose job it is to protect the quarterback, first and foremost. Almost as important as opening up holes for running backs, you got to make the whole offense go, and you're getting it done for several different people, and running back is a big part of that. Week 1, Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell, only 2 used. How did you see them? I know as an offensive lineman, former offensive lineman, you're judging them, making the right cut, going the right way, using their blocks correctly. How impressed, what kind of grade would you give the Eagles' 2 running backs from Sunday?
I have to give them an A, and not even because of what they did in the run. Of course, I love what they did in the run. In fact, you look at the second half, they literally, the Eagles' offense literally went underneath center and handed the ball out traditionally, not from pistol, not from shotgun. They went underneath center and handed off to the running back. And you love that in an offensive lineman because now you can go in double team, and they weren't even getting off on double teams. They were taking these double teams and put them in the lap of the linebacker. So the linebacker was wrong either way he went because they had so much drive off the ball that, any decision he made was going to be wrong. They were already into the line of scrimmage. I love that aspect. But what I saw from Gainwell and what I saw from, Miles Sanders, which made me smile, man, was the fact that they blitz pickup was great, man. It was impeccable. Both guys were able to stop blitzes. They went up there, fitted in, and you don't usually have that with smaller backs, and these 2 are smaller backs, but they were able to go up there, hit safeties, keep them off Jalen Hurts, and I was very surprised and very proud to say, man, those guys look pretty good out there. Even with I would have thought they wouldn't have Howard. They didn't even dress him because they had all the confidence in the world for both of those guys for blitz pickup. And I was surprised, but they did a great job of that, So when you have running backs that can blitz pick up and they have the ability to be elusive and run like that, man, that's a great tandem that you have. But to only dress two running backs, I don't know if I'd have did that.
All right. Well, last one from me, Barrett. Where were you Saturday? Where are you going to be this Saturday?
Well, I was in West Virginia. I did the West Virginia game. They played against Long Island. They beat up on them guys pretty good, 66-0. Yeah, it was pretty bad, man.
Who did West Virginia play?
Long Island, Long Island University. The
I
Sharks.
didn't even know
LIU has got a Division I football team now.
I didn't even know they had a Division I football team.
They've been in Division I for 3 years now, and it looked like it too. But I tell you what, they were a lot tougher than people gave them credit for. In fact, they held West Virginia from really wanting to dominate the way they wanted to dominate. Everybody thought it should have been 80-0. But those guys from LIU, they on their defensive line, they played on the other side of the line of scrimmage. They actually whipped their West Virginia's offensive line. I mean, they couldn't run the ball on them. Their best back had like -1 yards going into halftime. Yeah. So that coach was mad. So it was a teaching point for West Virginia, even though they still won. I mean, even the open kickoff, they ran back for a touchdown. So I knew what type of day it was. It was a lot of talking about my NFL career and what I did in college. A lot of that towards the end of the game. But yeah, man, it was tough, man. This week I have Kansas State, Nevada at Kansas State.
Right.
And also,
there we go.
Well, Nevada right
now. We know both of those teams.
Right. And now old alma mater. I'm going in there, doing my first game there at Kansas State. It's going to be a really good game. Nevada's favored to going into the game. They have a really good offense. Their defense are, also. And then, we have the local kid, Howard, is now starting again for Kansas State. He's a local kid from around here. So we'll see.
Have they honored you yet?
No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't honor me.
Come on.
Well, I mean, they were just ready for me to get out of there. Now I'm coming back.
Now, Barrett, correct me if I'm wrong. If you're already doing your prep, Nevada's Carson Strong, right? The quarterback.
Yes, Carson Strong. He's definitely a talent. He'll be drafted in the first 2 rounds this year.
Yeah. Oh,
big kid too, 6'5". Yeah, Carson Strong's pretty good.
I think he's going to be a first round.
The NFL draft. You got to get in the Kansas State Ring of Honor. Do they have a ring? We got to get you in there.
Yeah, they do, man. And I've been voted. I've come close a couple of years, but when I first got to Kansas State wasn't cool. But then we started, throwing out NFL players. Now it's hard for me to get in there. They got T. Newsome, you got Darren Sproles, you got guys like that, man. They're all in front of me. So I got to wait my turn now. Even though I came before them, I still got to wait my turn after those 2.
We'll see if we can twist some arms. All right, last one for me. And this one is absolutely off the record, okay?
All right.
Even though everybody may be looking. You're in studio. I know Ray Didinger. He's a note taker. He stays on top of things. He writes stuff down. I know Barkin. He's a yapper. He's talking. He's making comments. He's talking to everybody. What sets decorum while you're watching the game in studio prior to getting into the Eagle post-game show?
Well, I think they do that. I think NBC does this on purpose, but they put us on opposite sides of the office while we're watching the game. So me and him could be yelling at each other, yelling stuff back and forth to each other. Hey, man, did you see that right there? Yeah, I saw that. And then, almost like osmosis, everybody else in the room, they hear what we say. Now they sound
That's actually a brilliant idea.
Exactly.
Man.
So now the producers understand what we're going to talk about when we go on stage. So I mean, it's kind of a great concept, but yeah, that's what it is. Because I'm yelling at him, and he's yelling back over to me about what's going on in the game. So it works out pretty good. Then you have the Hall of Famer. He's charting everything, writing everything down. I mean, it's a nice little mix in there.
As you guys do the job every single week after the Eagle game. A lot of smiles this week. Barrett, thanks for smiling to us today. We'll work on getting you into that Kansas State.
I'm going to lobby for that.
Appreciate it, guys.
We'll work on it for you. That is Barrett Brooks from the middle. You'll catch him later on today here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. You catch him on NBC Sports Philly as well. McMullen and McDonald coming back, putting a bow on the show next on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.